News Alert.
All right, everybody, Pilar Arias here with you live now. We have some breaking news that I need to tell you about. It appears there's been a 5.3 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Southern California. I'm going to take you now to KTTV. That's Fox 11 Los Angeles, their live coverage. Let's listen in. So far, it appears no reports of damage. This is 17 miles off Santa Cruz Island, but let's listen in together.
Going crazy. Again, if you have any video out there you'd like to share with us, please do.
And it's whenever you have a situation like this, a natural, and this isn't a disaster, but something in nature that occurs, you know, we like to feel that we're in control of everything. We have our personal devices, we're connected, we're on a roll. Nature, we have no control over, whether it be a devastating flood, a wind-driven wildfire, or an earthquake like this. We're not in control, and it shows that our Earth is a very dynamic planet that creates these events. If we could go to that map, back to that map too, and you could look at the Channel Islands, and you could look at Santa Cruz Island, and the wider map, you could see that that island, the Santa Cruz Island, could tuck very nicely, almost like a piece of a puzzle, up against the Santa Barbara shore. Similar for Catalina Island and these other islands. So it's very possible, millions of years ago, that the coastline of Southern California looked much different, and that these islands actually broke off. That's a very active area there. You could see some of the faults off the coast of Malibu, off the coast of Ventura and Oxnard there. Those Channel Islands, a very volatile area when it comes to geological motions. Faulting,
and we should say,
folding.
Again, Rick, because, you know, obviously when we see a picture like this and happened out in the open ocean right there next to the islands there, the concern is for a tsunami or a possible tsunami, but this was not strong enough, or at this point, you know, the U.S. Geological Survey saying that there is no threat whatsoever of a tsunami, so we don't need to be worried about that.
Yeah, as I had predicted, in that you really have to have a tremendous earthquake and a huge uplift in the seafloor, and depending upon the fault that this earthquake occurred on, and it's very possible this could be a fault that hasn't been mapped yet. Again, we hear about this from time to time. Caltech, the leading geologist, the seismologist, will issue a report that an unknown fault was just discovered under Beverly Hills or under the West Side or down in the South Bay area. It's possible that this fault hasn't even been mapped yet either. You can see those red lines on the map. Those are faults running through known faults. We're not seeing one there at the epicenter of this earthquake. Again, a magnitude 5.3, considered a moderate earthquake. From what I'm seeing, I'm not hearing of any power outages. Lights aren't blinking red, even up towards Ventura and Oxnard. I'm checking all my sources as well. Just a good ground shaking that reminds us that we are in earthquake country and we can never be too complacent.
My stomach is still feeling a little, you know, like the earthquake itself, a little shaky.
Yeah, Marla got a little.
Did you guys go underneath the new set there?
Yeah, right.
I almost did.
It did shake. It did shake pretty good in here, I think. I'm looking at. It's interesting because the U.S. Geological Survey also starts to collect reports of people who report in of hearing or feeling any kind of an earthquake. And from what I can tell from their mapping, so this was even felt as far north as Santa Maria, close to the San Luis Obispo area, all the way down to Oceanside in the San Diego County area, and then as far east as Lancaster, even up to the northeast in Bakersfield. So obviously most of the reporting, it's all concentrated here, not just because we're so much closer to the epicenter of this earthquake, because so many people are reporting in from these highly populated areas in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. You know, that's where the strength was felt.
Those shake maps are great, and everybody at home, you can participate in that and do so, you know, in a responsible way. But you can log in, enter your zip code, and essentially it's very simple. The website asks you what you felt, what kind of ground shaking you experienced, and the scientists take that information, extrapolate it, and create this map, this shake map, which indicates where the strongest shaking occurred. And I'm sure we'll be able to get that up for you. and you will be able to correlate the strongest ground shaking with the geology, the closeness to the epicenter. You see where Oxnard and Malibu are in relation to where the earthquake occurred, the faulting, whether it was a strike slip or an uplift, a thrust fault, we don't know yet, but it's the subduction zones along the Pacific Northwest that you get that tremendous lift, because those are subduction zones there, and that is where you're going to get a dramatic rise in the seafloor if there were a powerful earthquake, and we're talking on the order of a magnitude 8 or above. And another reminder about the Richter scale, it's logarithmic, meaning that a 5 versus a 6 is 100 times stronger than a 5. So a lot of times people think, well, it's just a 1 step higher. No, it's 100 steps higher.
And so, because I'm thinking about my own family, of course, and making sure that you are prepared for an earthquake, it's a great resource. The CDC.gov has everything that you need, emergency supplies to be earthquake prepared. You know, you got to remember that you need to make sure that you have your medications that you might need in your earthquake kit, and to be able to survive for 72 hours, 3 days. I mean, it's a fantastic reminder, and then also to have a kit in your vehicle and workplace, and obviously at home, and to have the amount of water that you're going to need for 3 days.
And I always say, Carrie, make sure you have some cash and small bills, because the ATMs, if it's a big earthquake, they could all go down, the stores will close, and you might not have the cash to be able to use in an emergency situation. I want to point out that the LAPD headquarters is also sending a message out. They obviously, when something like this happens, they get inundated with phone calls. So the LAPD is sending a message out saying that they are aware of the 5.0 earthquake centered near the Channel Islands. They say, we will work with all of our local partners to check infrastructure and critical locations. They say keep the 911 lines open for emergency-related calls. If you don't have an emergency, they have an 800 number, 877-ASK-LAPD. Again, that's 877-ASK-LAPD. So, don't call 911 right now unless you have an actual emergency. I know that earthquake and the shaking frightened a lot of people there. Unless it's a serious situation, don't call the LAPD.
Sure, and then, it's interesting how selective it is in terms of where people felt it, where people did not. I mean, there's plenty of people in Orange County who are tweeting to the station and to me saying that they didn't feel it, and others in Orange County who said that they did feel it. In Toluca Lake, next to Universal Studios, Kevin is saying that he felt it, yet Dave in East Hollywood says, I didn't feel a thing. So it's funny how, some locations so close to each other felt it and didn't feel it all at once.
Looking at the list of earthquakes, I wanted to see if there was a trend, Bob and Marla, to see if there was some minor earthquakes prior to the magnitude 5.3 that occurred at exactly 12:29 Pacific Daylight Time. Nothing. No indication that there were any small micro earthquakes in that area over the last several hours or even the previous few days. And as of right now, there is still yet to be any aftershocks, which is still an earthquake. We call them aftershocks, but again, the Earth's crust is a very unique machine that moves according to things that we're still not completely clear of. I mean, we're still learning about seismology. We still have a lot to learn about what's going on. We're able to map these faults. We're able to look back to see historically what areas have been hit with powerful earthquakes in our state, and the strongest earthquakes have occurred over the last couple of 100 years over the San Andreas Fault. That's a strike slip fault where the two large plates are sliding and grinding against each other. The Pacific plate, the North America plate, and those two plates along the boundary is that fault, that San Andreas Fault. But there are a number of smaller faults that don't extend as long, like the San Andreas Fault from the border with Mexico all the way up off the coast of San Francisco, that could cause damaging earthquakes, serious damaging, fatal earthquakes underneath our city. And those are the ones that seismologists are really concerned with, especially with some of the older structures that remain in the city of Los Angeles, the brick buildings that are so vulnerable to shaking that could collapse in an earthquake magnitude 7.0 underneath our city.
Oh, thank you.
Right now we have, we want to show you a tweet from LAFD. We just heard from LAPD, and here's what LAFD has to say.
This is just talking about the time there, 12:34. Actually happened just before that. 200 North Main Street. The LAFD is now in earthquake mode. The USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, reporting a 5.3 magnitude earthquake near the Channel Islands during the earthquake. And went away, but they're in earthquake mode, and again, they're just preparing. They're doing a damage assessment. That's part of what they do after an earthquake to make sure that everything's okay. And at the same time, again, the LAPD is asking everyone to stay off the 911 lines unless it's an absolute emergency. The National Weather Service, interestingly enough, also getting information from the Tsunami Warning Center, also just now tweeted out, also just confirming exactly what we've been telling you all along, that there is no tsunami threat.
All right, we have Hal Eisner joining us now on set here in the studio, and I know you put it out on your social media.
They did.
Waiting to hear back from people as we are. Did you feel it?
I felt it. I was sitting at my desk working on some things, and all of a sudden, I just knew. I said, earthquake, because bam, you just felt it, and you knew exactly what it was. Sometimes trucks roll by our studios here in West LA, and you feel a bit of a rumble. There is a very big difference between a big truck going by and bouncing the road and an earthquake. This was very bumpy. It wasn't sharp. It didn't feel too much like a rolling, but it did feel like sort of a bumpy bumpy feel underneath me. And I want to address a couple of things you were talking about. One, fire department getting into fire mode. What that really means is that they put the fire trucks outside of the station, and that way they're able to move into a position very quickly.
Ready to roll.
And and I think that's a very important thing. They've found in the past that works very well, and they're ready to go and do whatever needs to be done at the moment. I think with these earthquakes, we tend to wonder what we're going to know in an hour from now, because they start with something. It feels like a rumble. I think my first reaction in the newsroom was, this isn't that close, is it? Because it didn't feel that strong. Maybe it's strong somewhere else. The epicenter is elsewhere. Turns out it was in the ocean. Yeah.
Which is we should all be thankful for.
Yeah, really, we should. And in the ocean, the question then becomes, how deep was this epicenter? How deep was this quake? And what's the ramification? Good to know that there's no tsunami concern, because this often happens with things like this. It's also important to recognize, I think, that we're always told by Caltech, we're always told by the U.S. Geological Survey, we're always told that an earthquake can be a precursor to possibly a larger earthquake. Now, that's not always the case. They say it's sometimes a 5% chance. But the fact of the matter is that you can have an earthquake right now, and then in a while we could have another one that's larger, because that's kind of the way these things can work. Not always, and sometimes if we have aftershocks, they may be less.
Right.
So it becomes a big mystery, and we sort of wait and see how this, pardon this terrible pun, shakes out, because there's much to see after an earthquake. Was there some damage? Maybe over on Catalina.
Maybe the Channel Islands.
Maybe in the Channel Islands.
Stuff out there too.
Right, exactly.
They're still doing, again, after something like this, it's the immediate earthquake mode, as you said. We just get ready just in case there could be something that's bigger. And at the same time, there is a damage assessment. So you're talking about Los Angeles County, the city of LA, which covers 470 square miles. It takes a long time to really get the damage assessment done. So at this point, we're not hearing of any reports of damage or injuries in LA County, in Ventura County, in Orange County, but certainly the damage assessment is now underway, if at all. Certainly a lot of rattled nerves out there, and we're seeing all of the action there on social media. So I'm hearing
a lot of people on social media, especially on my Facebook page, telling me things like, I felt it, wasn't that big. In North Hollywood, I felt it. In other areas, I didn't feel it. And this is part of what happens right after an earthquake here in Los Angeles. People start telling us, I felt it, here's what it felt like.
Right.
The question then becomes, chance, who's going to let us know that they've got bottles that came off the shelf?
Sure, and I mean, hearing from Khaleesi on Twitter here, she's in Beverly Hills, and she says our 42-story building felt it. So, you know, if you're on the 42nd floor, that's really going to get you rattled.
Well, a lot of these buildings have rollers underneath. And so what happens, and I can tell you one building in particular that I used to work in, was Sunset Vine Tower in the middle of Hollywood. They're on rollers. And so when something like this happens, the building actually kind of rolls and sways, and that's to protect the building, the offices, and the people inside. That's part of the earthquake, you know, retrofitting that some have done, and some buildings are built that way. But it is interesting. I used to go to a place up on the top floor, a restaurant, and when the lamps would sway, so would the building, and you could really feel that on the top floor.
Well, that's the bigger concern out here, is really for the older buildings that haven't gone through the earthquake retrofits, the upgrades. As terrifying as that may be, if you're in a high-rise building that's built on a set of wheels and rollers, and the whole building is moving and swaying a long way, it's got to be extremely terrifying. But at the same time, you know, when you look at some of these other cities that have these earthquakes, that have widespread damage, a lot of these cities don't have the up-to-date building codes that Los Angeles has, and so they're dealing with a lot more damage, a lot more destruction, and unfortunately fatalities and injuries.
And when we talk about a 5.3, that's no small earthquake. That's a good size shake.
No, in fact, it's considered a moderate.
It is a moderate earthquake, right? Exactly. It's a good size shake, and that's why we feel it the way we do.
All right, let's bring you up to date of what we know so far about this earthquake. Again, a 5.3 earthquake is what we're hearing, that it was just occurred. LA Fire Department in this earthquake mode. They are checking for damage all across LA County, Ventura County. This earthquake was located off the Channel Islands, and it happened just before 12:30 this afternoon, as you certainly felt. The Tsunami Warning Center now saying that there is no danger at this time.
Matt Johnson, he is live for us in West LA, and I'm sure you've found plenty of people who felt this quake. It was just 30 minutes ago. Matt, what are you hearing?
Yeah, you know, I'm talking to a lot of people here at the gas station. So we're at Olympic and Bundy, and people that are filling up. A lot of people didn't feel it. Obviously, they were in their cars. So I was over at the Santa Monica Pier reporting on that other story, and we were en route back to the station here in West LA, and then my phone started blowing up with all of those alerts. So we didn't actually feel it. But growing up in Southern California, it's still very part of the dialogue. When we were at our other report earlier today, we were actually talking about being earthquake prepared, believe it or not. So we're live here over at this gas station where we have a lot of people inside. Some felt it, and ironically, some other people did not feel it. They say that there was no damage reported here, and there is no damage being reported in Southern California as far as we know, and no injuries. But they say that nothing was rattled off the street, off the shelves rather. And let's just try to talk to people. No, she didn't feel the earthquake. So basically, you know, just be earthquake prepared. Back to you.
All right, Matt, we appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, so it's funny. I mean, I just got a tweet from Sal in Inglewood. He says, I didn't feel a thing in Inglewood, yet hearing from someone else in Compton, Cheyenne in Compton says, I felt it. So it's pick and choose, right, Hal?
Well, in Inglewood, Hugo Alvarado tells me that, yes, I felt it in Inglewood.
Interesting.
So maybe one side of the street and not the other side of the street. Rosie in Orange County near John Wayne Airport says she didn't feel it. Tony Gutierrez, who lives in Long Beach, he says it's very calm there. Crystal Lake, who's down in Signal Hill, says she felt it, told her boss, and he thought she was crazy, you know, that sort of thing. All right, and we're expecting a news conference from Caltech here shortly, and I guess we'll bring that to you live when that happens. But just to give you a couple more of the comments here. West Covina, not felt there by Lexi Bryant. In Woodland Hills, Guadalupe Chavez felt it. So you see, this is really scattered. You're seeing some over here, some over there. And even in the same community like Inglewood, one person doesn't feel it, the other person does.
Sure. I can been in a situation before where you're in a car and you certainly do not feel it at all. Your suspension is just feels like anything else.
Right.
But the U.S. Geological Survey, we've gone to Caltech before, and we've seen they do the quake reporting maps, and you can see kind of where they map out where all of the reports are coming in. All the maps that I've been seeing, it's certainly highly concentrated in LA County, Ventura County, but some of it felt as far as Bakersfield, as far as Santa Maria near San Luis Obispo, and all the way down to San Diego County as well. So a moderate earthquake, and if you were in West LA or Los Angeles, certainly you felt it likely more vigorously than the rest.
By the way, that news conference we talked about is at 1:30, so you may want to hang with us until then, because we should be getting a lot more information at 1:30 from the officials on this.
Yeah, continual updates there from Caltech and U.S. Geological Survey, so they're going to give us the very latest on exactly what they're seeing from all of their high-tech equipment there. They are pretty much the source for earthquakes, even worldwide.
One of the interesting maps they have over there is a shake map, and what it does, and you'll see this at some point this afternoon. What they have is they show you the area that got affected around the epicenter and the intensity of it, and that's something we're going to want to see, because that's really interesting and important information.
All right, we want to check in with Rick Dickert once again out there at the weather office in Van Nuys. And what are your sources telling you now, Rick?
I was looking at the shake map as well, and there was one area that's shaded in yellow, which would indicate strong shaking was felt, and that was somebody who actually reported it from Santa Cruz Island. There's a few people over there. There's actually some weather observing sites over there. I know some people who work over there, but those islands, the Channel Islands, a national park, are sparsely populated, so you're not going to get a lot of reports from that area. You see where Santa Cruz Island is in relation to the Oxnard Plain, Oxnard shores there. Port Hueneme along the coast would be a community, a beach community there that would have been closest to the epicenter. And again, it's all about the proximity to the epicenter, where the fault.
Did we just lose Rick?
We might have.
Sounds like we just lost Rick.
So we want to remind you that LA Fire.
All right, everybody. Pilar Arias here with Fox News Now, a part of Fox10Phoenix.com with you this afternoon. Just getting word that KABC there in Los Angeles, they have their helicopter up looking for earthquake damage in Southern California. So we may be switching over to that picture. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Let's keep listening in here.
There. The fire department is now in earthquake mode because of this 5.3 earthquake, and essentially the fire department, LA Fire Department, saying that all 106 neighborhood fire stations, they are doing a complete and strategic survey fanning across 470 square miles in the greater Los Angeles area, and they are leaving their fire departments right now, and they're out and about in the neighborhoods. One of the things that they're looking at are the infrastructure in the area. So we're talking about freeway overpasses and underpasses, things that may have cracked in an earthquake, just to make sure that the structural integrity of those overpasses, anything that cars or vehicles may be driving on, are going to be safe.
All right, we want to go upstairs to Sky Fox, where Kevin Takumi is flying around. And Kevin, what are you hearing?
We're making our way out of the West Valley here and headed out towards Camarillo, check and see if there's any damage out there. We are hearing on the scanners that most of the LAPD divisions, as well as City Fire and County Fire, are making a roll call, taking account of all their officers, as well as them checking out for any structural damage to any of the overpasses or bridges or anything like that. So far, they've all returned with reports that there is no damage at this time. So we're going to make our way a little bit farther out to the west and north here, up towards Port Hueneme and Camarillo, and see if there's any visible damage. But also, so far on the scanners, we have not heard any reports to the Ventura County Fire Department of any kind of damage so far that is significant.
Good news. All right. Well, if you hear anything, Kevin, get back to us. Let us know. In the meantime, we're hearing from many of you, the viewers out there. We appreciate that, finding us on social media and letting us know. Hal, what do you have?
I have some more. Let's talk a little bit about the coast right now. David Brown says he's in the Montalvo area, Ventura, up on the hill, if you're familiar with that. He says it was a strong jolt. He says the shake, the sequence made the couch jump up and over an inch, he claims. It's on a hard floor, and he says the two dogs were on the couch when it moved. After the initial jolt, the shake was more of a roll. Down in El Segundo, they felt it there. Kaiser Permanente in Woodland Hills, more inland, Angie Matsumura says she felt a very strong quake there. Kay Oliver, she felt it where she was. So we have a number of reports, one from Stacy Smith in Marina Del Rey. She felt it for a while. So no matter where you are, you may or may not have felt it.
All right, and I'm hearing from quite a few people in Cyprus, including Erica Olivas on my Instagram. She just says she felt it, and she put the sad face because she didn't like to feel the earthquake. You know, I understand what that's like, Erica. We all do. All right, we have a woman on the phone.
Ann Mendoza. Ann, are you there?
Yes, I am.
And you sound a little rattled. I imagine you felt it. Where are you located?
We're in Southgate, California. That's over here by Downey and Downey, Bellflower area. And we felt the swaying. We were swaying from side to side. And it got your attention, believe me.
And what about any damage to your home?
No, none of that. I was mentioning to my husband that I wonder what's going to happen with the buildings, because it seems like every time there's an earthquake, they stop construction on the tall buildings of Los Angeles, saying that nothing should be higher than City Hall. So I don't know. I was wondering about that. And also, I did want to mention my dad was from Mexico City, and he said since the city, have you noticed from anybody that's from that area over here, when there's an earthquake, they all run out of the houses, and that's because they really feel it. It's like Jello over there. You know, the city behind it was built on that pond. So I thought that was really interesting.
Hey, Ann, are you prepared? You know, you live in Southern California. You sound like you've lived here for quite some time, and you always see our reports and the officials.
Yeah, my husband and I were both born here, so we're kind of used to it, because that seems to be part of living here. Is I remember when I was a little girl, my mom and dad used to take me for a ride to go see Long Beach, and how all the buildings that were knocked down from the earthquake they had there, a very large earthquake.
All right, and thank you so much for calling in. We're glad to see that you are safe and there was no damage done to your home. Calling from Southgate. We appreciate it.
All right, also on the line right now, is it David Rosenholtz? Is that the last name, David Rosenholtz? David, how you doing?
That's correct, sir. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I want to ask you a question, because back when we had the Northridge quake, I got pretty badly hurt. I happened to be laying in bed. All of a sudden, I had a big bookshelf come down to a karate chop across my leg. I can't tell you how much that hurt. And it was a reminder to me to get straps to strap bookcases and other things against the wall, keep the TVs back, do the things that, when you look around your house, look at the things that could fall on you, your children, your dogs, your cats, because that fell on me, and I still remember the pain. It's been quite some time. Are you prepared like that, David?
I am prepared like that. I also was around during the Northridge quake. I grew up in Chatsworth, California, so we felt it pretty strongly over there, and yeah, we strapped everything down. I remember our chimney fell down, and the mantle inside the house also came off the wall, and so we kind of got prepared after that.
Yeah, my perimeter wall came up off of the foundation. Let me ask you, what did you feel on this one today?
You know, just like the last woman who was speaking, it was a swaying motion. I'm up in the 7th floor of an office building in West LA, so it didn't feel as jarring as maybe people on the ground were feeling.
Is your building on rollers?
It must be, because it felt very relaxing, I must say.
Very relaxed. Mine felt like I was on a whoopee cushion. It was a really bumpy sort of feel. But you were more of a sway up on the 7th floor of a building. That sounds to me like it probably is a building on rollers. Again, that's a very significant way of protecting a building, and I think we've seen that on a lot of buildings here in Southern California. David, thank you very much. I hope nothing fell off your shelves, did it?
No, we're okay over here.
All right,
I hope you guys are okay as well.
Well, we're good.
You know,
Yes,
if anything, I have to say this is a talker, because I'm getting texts, and I'm sure people out there are all getting texts from people all across the country asking everyone, are you okay?
Are you okay? Which
so
is nice.
I got another message from Nancy Beamish. Thank you for reaching out to me. She says that she has been in a classroom with 2 other teachers. They had their students under the table. So what we often hear is the drop, cover, and hold on. And this is a school that likely practices that in a drill, and they did a drop, cover, and hold on.
Well, I heard from, speaking along the coastline, I heard from a gentleman I know down at the Terranea Resort, Lewis, and he said that he at least didn't feel it, even though he's right there along the coastline there, but that is further south.
All right. Miguel Bourbon telling us that his wife works at Wilshire and Franklin. She didn't feel a thing in West LA, but they felt it pretty strong. We were advised by management to remove our cars from underneath the parking structure for a safety precaution.
And I believe we have our first look at this in terms of video sent to us on Twitter, unconfirmed, but this person says that this is what it looked like the moment the earthquake hit in the downtown LA area. So we're pulling that up for you to hopefully be able to show that to you. And apparently it's some pretty good shaking going on there on that unconfirmed
So the video is going to come in, the pictures are going to come in. Miguel Bourbon, thank you for tweeting to me too. He reached out to us. He's in Hawthorne, and he showed us pictures of his cabinets. He said cereal and chip boxes fell off of his fridge. He lives on a 2nd floor unit. He felt it strong. He said it shook for a while, and some of his like medicine cabinets and the like opened up. So far that's what we're seeing, is a lot of things falling off shelves, doors opening, that sort of thing.
All right, we have a 13-year-old caller on the line, Maya Pearson. Sweetheart, where are you? And you obviously felt it, and you're okay?
Yeah, where I'm at, I'm in Port Hueneme, so I kind of felt it fully.
Oh, yeah.
Mia person.
Mia? I'm sorry, Mia.
Yeah. So how I felt it was I was asleep.
Oh.
So I wasn't really like understanding. So my mom woke me up and I saw everything shaking. I saw like the windows. I saw the items on the table. So then I'm like, is this an earthquake? All of a sudden she like pulled me to this doorway because I guess it's like the safest way. So we like stayed in the door and then it kind of stopped. So then my mom checked the outside and then it all stopped. And I was pretty frightened and I didn't even call no family members. The first person I called was my best friend. So
you're a good friend, Mia, and your best friend, is she okay as well?
Yeah, her name is Jalissa. Tell them that we have family that's out. And we also have family like out on the ocean, so whale watching.
Oh, okay. Well, it'd be interesting to hear from them and see if how they reacted to it and what their experience was. Mia, Hal Eisner has a question for you here.
I want to know, I hear your mom in the background. Is that your mom?
Yeah.
How's she doing? How's your mom?
Hi, my name is Monique Wallace.
Hi, Monique.
And as my 13-year-old Jamia was saying, we're in Port Hueneme. Mm-hmm. We're about 3 blocks from the beach. Right next door to the Port Hueneme Police Department. We really felt everything because we're right out here, by the ocean. I felt tremors yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Oh, you did?
I knew it was, yes, I felt tremors yesterday. Oh. I saw the windows vibrating yesterday, and I said to myself yesterday, that seemed like it was an earthquake, and then just kind of forgot about it. today there was no mistaking it, and my daughter was terrified, but I've taught her, you know, keep a calm head in these instances and just be safe and get in the doorway and, you know, follow the things they've taught you at school in the midst of an earthquake and the things I've taught her. But she was pretty scared.
Let me tell you a story about kids. You know, one of the things that parents that we need to do is make sure our kids understand safety and comfort and things to do during a situation like this. And one of the things that we did when my oldest daughter was very little, she happened to have a thing for Simba from The Lion King. And that was the little doll that she went to bed with every single night. So we made sure there was a Simba at the school, a Simba at Grandma and Grandpa's, a Simba everywhere. So if there was an earthquake at school, she'd be able to have Simba there with her. So sometimes even something like that is very important.
Right.
Carlos Quintero is also with us on the phone. Thank you very much, Mia.
Thank you, Mia. And before we get to Carlos, let me just say this, that Dr. Lucy Jones, who we know her well, seismologist, founder, and chief scientist, Dr. Lucy Jones, she just tweeted out this. I'm going to read this to you. She says, the offshore faults that produced today's magnitude 5.3 quake are part of the system that moves Southern California around a bend of the San Andreas Fault. So Rick Dickert was saying earlier that he wasn't sure which fault. It could be an unknown fault to us, to scientists, but Dr. Lucy Jones is saying that this is around the bend of the San Andreas Fault, which we know all too well.
Let's go to Carlos Quintero. He's calling in now. Carlos, you are not too far there from our last caller. You're in the Oxnard area. What did you feel?
Yeah, I was actually working. I work from home, and I was, you know, working on the computer, and I felt a jerk from left to right, and to me, I was like, oh, you know, am I just Lucy? I don't know what was going on, so I kept on working, and I just felt it jerk really hard from left to right. And that's when I knew. I was like, oh, man, this is an earthquake. So I immediately just got off my computer chair and told my dad, you know what, get to the doorway. And we got to the doorway, and it fell for quite a while. I know 15 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but you could feel it all.
Oh, no, Carlos had the same reaction. I would say it was about 15 seconds here at the studios in West Los Angeles. And yes, 15 seconds feels like, you know, a good hour at least, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, most definitely. And I'm literally in Oxnard, and I'm off the Channel Islands Harbor. So, you know, and my first thing, I was like, you know, right off the back, I was like, tsunami. You know, so I immediately went to the news, and, you know, I started freaking out. Then I was thinking about my daughter, so I had to check on my daughter, and I had to check on Grandma, check on my mom. You know, I just had to do it. I was like, oh, man, got to check on my family, you know, because it's been a while since we had an earthquake out here.
Sure. And you always get the question then now, when things like this happen, you know, are you prepared? Are you ready? Do you have an earthquake kit? Do you have a go bag? Is that something that you've been thinking about or already have in place in your house?
Yeah, actually, I do have a go bag. I have batteries, we got canned foods, we got flashlights, we got candles. So prepared on all that, but, you know, there's always, you know, so much more things we could have, you know, more waters, and you don't really think about it until it actually hits, where you start thinking more on what else you can prepare for this type of situation.
And there's no doubt there's going to be a run-up on earthquake preparedness kits out there.
Carlos, thank you so much for calling in. We're glad you guys are all safe up there. We appreciate it.
I do want to thank you, Carlos. I do want to get this out there. I just heard from Rick Dickert, who says that, in fact, it was not on the San Andreas Fault, as I gathered from Dr. Lucy Jones' tweet, so I misinterpreted that. And I'm just being told that we will actually hear from Dr. Jones on the phone in just a matter of seconds here. So again, she says that the offshore faults that produced today's quake are part of the system that moves Southern California around a bend of the San Andreas Fault. And so we can have her clarify what exactly that means. Okay, Dr. Lucy Jones, thanks so much for calling into the station.
Okay, glad to be here.
I just read your tweet, in fact, so it's not actually on the San Andreas.
Oh, it's definitely not on the San Andreas. But because the San Andreas takes a bend north of here, we have on the geologic time, Southern California is being pushed around the bend, and that creates all of our mountains. And part of that system extends down into the Channel Islands. It's partly why the islands are there. So it's all part of that. We have hundreds of faults that are not the San Andreas, and that accommodate this deformation around it. This is just really ordinary part of life in Southern California.
Of course. Can you give us an idea, Dr. Jones, why it is we felt what we felt? The length of time, people said they felt at 15, 20 seconds. I don't know if that's just what they perceived. And the rolling motion, why, for this particular type of earthquake, why we felt what we felt?
It's not the type of earthquake that makes the rolling motion, it's how far away you are. So the earthquakes all produce a wide range of frequencies, and the high frequency energy dies off quickly. So when you're right on top of it, you feel very jerky motion. But as you get farther away, the really sharp motions have died away, and what's left is the rolling motions. Just like when you hear a boom, somebody go with their radio down the street, and when you're a long ways away, all you can hear is the bass notes booming away. Same thing with the earthquake. So when you're feeling rolling motion, that says you're a long ways away from an earthquake. And since this was offshore, everybody was a pretty long ways away from it.
Hi, Lucy. It's Hal Eisner. How you doing?
Hey, Hal.
My question to you has to do with something that I know and other people have written to me on Facebook. Foreshock, aftershock, percentage of another shock coming. It's usually, we're told, maybe 5%, but fill us in on that.
Exactly. Right. So when we've looked around at all earthquakes, we keep on seeing this about 5% of the time. The aftershock becomes bigger than the first earthquake, and then we change the name and call the first one a foreshock. So, which means 95% of the time the aftershocks are smaller than the first one. And at this point, we haven't recorded any aftershocks. Because the earthquake's so far offshore, we don't have any nearby stations, so we aren't seeing the smallest events. But it doesn't look like it's producing very many aftershocks at this point.
There are different kinds of earthquakes. There's the slip strike, if I said that correctly, and that's a vertical, right?
Right. Well, there's strike-slip earthquakes, which means you slip along strike. You slip horizontally. Or there are, they're sometimes called dip slip and sometimes called thrust or normal faulting, where you're moving up the plane. And this is a strike-slip motion, which means the ground motions were horizontal in the event.
All right, so this was a strike-slip.
This was strike-slip, and that also means we didn't change the shape of the seafloor even though it was underwater. Oh. Now, even if it had been a thrust, this is just way too small an earthquake to produce a tsunami, but so we really don't have to worry about that on the smaller event.
And Dr. Jones, can you give us a perspective on the magnitude here? So they're calling it a 5.3, and what does that mean in relation to, let's say, earthquakes that we felt over the past couple of years, I want to say?
Well, in the last few years, that's larger than anything we've had for the last couple of years. You have to go back to 2014. We had the La Habra earthquake, which I think was a 5.4. But compared to Northridge 25 years ago at a 6.7, Northridge would have had something like 60 times as much energy released as this event.
Wow. Wow.
So what do you want our viewers to know? What's the takeaway from today? Because there's a lot of people who, you're very calm about it because this is what you do for a living, right? But go ahead.
What I'd like people to remember is this is ordinary life in Southern California. On the long-term average, we have an earthquake like this every year in Southern California. The last few years have been a bit quieter, but this is just really ordinary every year sort of shaking. But every time, any place that has regular 5 also occasionally has the 6s. So this is not as big as it can get. If this really scared you, it's time for you to really understand your earthquakes better and figure out how to make yourself safe.
And prepare,
lots of good information on the lots of good information on the web. Look at 7 Steps to Earthquake Safety or Earthquake Country Alliance. Lots of things you can read to find out how to be safer.
And you spent many years as the city's earthquake czar. Just really quick, Dr. Jones, where does the city now stand in terms of our preparedness with the buildings? We had talked earlier just about some of the buildings on rollers. Where does the city stand right now?
Okay, so the city of Los Angeles is doing more than any other city in the country to make themselves safe. Of the about 15,000 buildings that need to be retrofitted, 4,000 of them are already in process. So, like for everyone, we could be better than where we are, but we're not as far as we could be.
All right, Dr. Lucy Jones, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Appreciate it.
All right, Matt Johnson, he is live for us in West LA, where you are close to us here at the station. And who do you have with you?
Yeah, you know what? We're at a very interesting intersection. So we're at Olympic and Bundy, and if you're not familiar with this part of West LA, there's a lot of businesses over here. The gas station behind me, they didn't feel it inside there. They said there was no damage. We're not hearing of damage being reported, but some people with some rattled nerves. I have Mary over here. Hi, Mary. You grew up in LA.
Yeah, I did. So it was just a very small earthquake. I didn't feel much. We all just confirmed it by asking each other, like, do you guys feel that? It wasn't much.
Was it a jolt for you, or was it one of those rolling earthquakes? Did you hear anything?
I didn't hear anything. It was more like a jolt for me. So it wasn't much. I was on the phone with the customer, so it's not like I could like drop the phone and go under the table.
What'd your customer tell you?
Nothing. You know, the customer was on the phone, so I highly doubt that person felt it.
You know, when's the last time you've been through an earthquake or felt one?
I would say about maybe sometime last year.
Yeah, we were listening to the doctor. She said, you know, that this is something that we experience. You know that. We both grew up here. Yeah. So, you know, are you going to think about being prepared? Are you prepared at home?
Actually, I'm not prepared at home.
You grew up here. You should know.
I know I should have things prepared, but I mean, how often are you going to get a big quake? I mean, let's be real. Being in LA, you get small quakes, not really that big.
So did you go under your desk? Is there a plan in place at work? Or are you at least going to ask about one?
I am going to ask about one with my supervisors. They're in today, so.
Yeah, and any family members? You texting with any loved ones or friends?
Yeah, I'm texting my sister. She's at home, and
is she worried?
Yeah, she has kids. She has 3 kids. So yeah, definitely she's worried. I'm going to be texting her and seeing if she's okay. I just barely went on my lunch right now, so.
Yeah, you're on your lunch break. We're going to let you go, but you know what? Are you going to at least go home and think about getting that kit together?
Yeah,
please.
Definitely. Will do.
Okay, thank you for standing by and talking to us. As you were. You too as well. So you know what? That's kind of the mixture out here. We are finding people that are a little bit rattled. Not so much if you grew up in Southern California like we did, but you know what? This is exactly the time, as you were saying, Bob and Marla, to begin thinking about those earthquake preparedness kits. You got to have it ready for 2 or 3 days. And if you don't want to go through the trouble of buying all of the items yourself, go to the American Red Cross and they have them ready for you. I'm going to send it back to you in the studio.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. In fact, Dr. Lucy Jones was mentioning resources for us, and I'm on the website. In fact, she mentioned earthquakecountry.org, Earthquake Country Alliance. That's the name of it there. Great information for all of us to live by, and then there's the 7 steps to prepare for an earthquake, so that can help all of us. In the meantime, we want to go to Porter Ranch. That's where Pablo Alsina is. He joins us now live there. And what are you hearing out there, Pablo?
Hi, Marla and Bob. Well, I was at Rams practice facility because they presented their new player, Brandon Cooks. And while we were waiting, our car started to slowly shake. I thought it was just a big truck passing by, but it turns out, yep, it was this earthquake. So we pulled over here to ask the people if they felt a little bit more than what we felt. I'm here with Valerie and Johnny, husband and wife. Where were you? What'd you feel?
Well, we were at the office. We were realtors at Coldwell Banker here in Porter Ranch, and you know, just getting by our day as usual. And yeah, we started to feel a little bit of shaking, and a few agents at the office were like, "Hey, you feel that?" And you know, it's definitely concerning because you know they keep saying there's going to be a big one to hit soon. So you know, we're on alert, and we have our 2-year-old daughter at daycare. So I was just telling my husband that it would be really scary for us to be in a different location than her for that. So, you know, it always opens up to be aware and to have everything ready and things like that, because it's easy to overlook those things.
So you felt it, but Johnny, you were telling me earlier that you didn't quite feel it. Talk to us about your experience.
I really didn't feel anything. That's the sad part too, that when there is an earthquake, you're just like, it's just an earthquake, and you go back to whatever you're doing. So maybe that could have been it. But yeah, I suffer from head injuries, so sometimes I get dizzy and I don't even know if that's what's causing it. But yeah, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel much of it.
So husband and wife, you have a 2-year-old kid. Do you have an earthquake kit at home? Are you prepared, ready for, like you mentioned, the big one?
No, we don't. And God, I'm ashamed to admit that, but it's definitely something to get on and, you know, have, especially because it's not just us, you know, we can just pick up and go ourselves, but we have a little one, so it's something to get on, work on.
Any fear at all, or you born and raised here in California? No fear at all of earthquakes?
No, no fear at all. There's just, you get used to it, I guess, after a while. I mean, I went
sensitized.
Yeah, and after we had that big one, it can't. I don't know. You always just think it can't get worse than that. So
I'm from Miami. We worry about hurricanes, but we always know when they're going to come. With earthquakes, it's totally different. So when you're sitting on your desk and it starts to shake, what thoughts were running through your mind? Did anything fall from your desk?
Nothing fell. It started more as a little bit of a subtle thing, and we didn't have too many things on the desk, so
But we'll go to the news conference at Caltech right now, talking about the latest on this 5.3 earthquake.
Channel Island, intensity 6, which might have caused light damage, but that's all the details we have at this point.
Right. So, for Dr. Huff, so a 5.3 magnitude that far away from the coast should not produce any major damage. It's not here.
Not along the coast. The only possible issue of a stronger shaking would be on the closest Channel Islands, but even then in California, 5.3 is not going to cause significant damage.
The fact that it was 10 miles deep, is that shallow enough to explain why it was felt all the way in Los Angeles, but not felt, for example, at Santa Catalina Island or even other parts of Ventura County?
It's early to say much about the felt distribution at this point. A 5.3 is a good size jolt, so it's not surprising that it's felt fairly strongly, but not all that strongly. I felt it across the street, but nobody else in the building felt it.
Doctor, are there any particular seismic faults which are along this general area where the quake has happened, where we could see another quake triggered as a result of what we had at roughly about 12:30?
So there are a number of fault segments in the Santa Cruz Basin here, so a lot hosting strike-slip faults, as we saw earlier today. We would expect aftershocks, and there is a potential for some triggered seismicity. We haven't seen anything so far.
Now, there is one major fault that runs along in that area and extends into the Southern California coast area all the way down to Long Beach, the Newport Inglewood fault. We know about 90 years ago, that was the Long Beach earthquake. That was a magnitude 7+. We haven't had anything massive along there. But is it possible we could see activity as a result of this quake, which could trigger anything along the Newport Inglewood?
Well, this event is not along the trace of the offshore continuation of the Newport Inglewood fault. It's farther west than that, but there's certainly fault systems offshore. There's always about a 1 in 20 chance that an earthquake like this will trigger something bigger than itself.
And that goes, it's about 5%, if I understand correctly, it's about 5% chance.
Yes.
It goes down quickly over time.
Yes.
It's been long enough now.
1 hour and 2 minutes.
Yeah. So the structure that this was on, the Santa Cruz Island, the channel, all the 8 islands, they're on a fault system of their own, are they not?
There's any number of faults offshore, and so I can't speak to the detailed fault that produced this event right now. But there is the potential for bigger earthquakes offshore. In 1925, there was a magnitude 6.6 earthquake near Santa Barbara that was closer to the shore. In 1812, there was a bigger event that we know very little about that caused a tsunami that was reported in the Santa Barbara area. So there's the potential for bigger events, as in almost all of California.
Right, but in this case, for a tsunami, it has to be a much larger event than what we saw here.
Yeah, no, we don't expect significant effects from a magnitude 5.3 in California, and the odds that this is going to trigger anything bigger are very, very low.
It's like 5% right now, and then we're talking about if we go to another hour or so, what will those chances diminish to?
I don't know.
Well, you work on the math. Part of the reason why this is making so much news is that we haven't had. We normally get a 5 at least once a year.
Sure.
We haven't had one in a while, so all of a sudden we have one, and it reignites the interest in seismology.
Wakes everyone up, indeed. So we haven't felt anything that strongly in Los Angeles since La Habra in 2014 in March. We've had other magnitude 5s around Southern California, but not really in felt areas. So down near Borrego Springs, near Anza Borrego, and up near Wasco, we've had some magnitude 5s over the last couple of years. But it's been a while since anyone in Los Angeles has had such a good reminder that we live in earthquake country.
So this is run of the mill. This is a standard earthquake, and you expect the aftershock sequence to be normal.
That's the expectation, but we can never count on earthquakes to obey the averages. People in California always have to be mindful that a big earthquake is never likely. It's always possible, and earthquakes like this are the heads up of that.
Right, and can we also revisit when some people hear that it was felt in Montebello? but it wasn't felt by some people in Ventura. Is that based on where you're standing? If you're upstairs of a wood frame building, you're going to experience the swaying, you're going to experience the amplification more than if you're on the surface?
So yeah, it's a combination of the source, where you are, the sort of ground that you're on, and also the structure you might be in.
Yeah, and the distribution of shaking from any one earthquake can be complicated. It can depend on which way the fault actually breaks. Because if it breaks towards you, you're more likely to feel the shaking than if you're behind where it started and broke to. So there's a lot of details that control the shaking that you actually feel.
How much warning did you get from Shake Alert, if any, on this one? Do you know?
I think here in Los Angeles we did get 10 seconds, I believe. we can replay it.
Let's recap the details and louder. So
let's come back to that warning.
Louder.
I was across the street. We got tens of seconds of warning, and before I actually felt the earthquake. So in this area.
How does that come in?
I'm sorry?
Is that on a cell phone? Is it on a pager?
This was a test system on a colleague's computer.
On a computer. So it's like an alert sound?
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
We'll play it later. Yeah. You want a recap of the main earthquake details, Debbie? That's what you were shouting.
Yes.
Excuse me, everyone.
Okay, if you can introduce yourselves. Some of us are just beginning.
Sure. So my name's Dr. Jen Andrews. I'm the staff seismologist here at the Caltech Seismolab.
My name's Dr. Susan Huff. I'm a seismologist with the U.S. Geological Survey in Pasadena.
So the current details we have is that this was a magnitude 5.3 earthquake. It happened about 30 kilometers south of Santa Cruz Island, somewhere between about 10 and 15 kilometers depth, but we're still working on the details.
No reports of any serious damage or even minor damage. Have you heard any damage?
We haven't heard any anecdotal damage. As Dr. Huff mentioned, the reported felt intensity would suggest there could be some light structural damage on the islands very close by, but we wouldn't expect significant damage here on the coast.
Right, and there's not much structures on those islands. It's Park Service.
I don't believe so. And the level of shaking that was reported might have knocked things off of shells, for example, but it wouldn't have seriously damaged any structure.
Do we have any kind of a history of this particular fault and this particular zone being active within the last 5, 10, 15 years of this magnitude?
So I was doing a search in our historic catalogue, which goes back to the 1930s. In this area of the Santa Cruz Basin, we have seen two over magnitude 4 in our catalogue, one at 4.2, one at 4.8. We haven't got anything recorded over 5 here in the Santa Cruz Basin, but it does have a number of fault segments. So,
can you do a recap of that warning that you were talking about? A computer, just explain that to us.
Well, just to finish up the thought on historical events, the most significant earthquake in that region was way back in 1812 in December. It did generate a reported tsunami, not a major one, but one that was reported. We just don't know very much about that earthquake, including what fault it happened on, because it was just too early in our history.
Because
as far as the warning, that's we're going to be able to give you more details about how the system performed a little bit later. But warning did go out on the test system, and for people in Los Angeles, the warning was on the order of 10 seconds. But again, it's too early to give you the details on that.
That's somewhat gratifying, though, that it actually happened.
Well, so I actually personally I received the warning before I felt the shaking across the street.
10 seconds, you said?
It was on that order, but we really need to look at the system to understand exactly how it performed in different areas.
And the warning relates to the distance you are from the earthquake.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's a belief that we are in a.
All right, you were listening to Caltech, the press conference there. They are telling us now, confirming a 5.3 earthquake. They say just off Santa Cruz Island, the strongest earthquake felt in 4 years. They said the intensity not really enough to create significant damage, and they stressed no tsunami danger as well.
But the significant element that came from this news conference, as we look at a fire station that is in earthquake now mode in Orange County. Is this in Orange County?
This is in Ventura County,
Ventura County.
but all the counties, Ventura County, LA County, they're in this earthquake mode.
And
so
this is standard operating procedure to pull these trucks out of these stations.
They pull the trucks out of the stations just to make sure that they don't get jarred shut.
What I was trying to say, though, from that news conference from Caltech, that's the most interesting and significant is that they do have an earthquake warning system, and they did get a warning in terms of how long they need to look at that and see, but then that can help us in future earthquake situations, of course.
They said it was off of a laptop, had about a 10-second warning.
All right, let's go to Matt Johnson again, live for us in West Los Angeles, talking to folks out there and their experience. Matt.
Yeah, hi. So we're here with Nell and Tony. So you guys were just getting some stuff probably for lunch. It wasn't earthquake supplies.
No, we're just getting lunch right now.
Okay, so talk to me about the experience, though. You're originally from Chicago. Have you been through an earthquake before?
I have, but, you know, for some reason, I guess I'm still not prepared because I didn't know what to do when I felt the shaking. Like, everyone's sleeping under desks, and I'm just sitting there like, we're supposed to do that? We should be doing that? All right.
Nell, what about you? You're originally from Southern Oregon.
I am, but I was in the bathroom today when it happened, and there's no contingency plan for something like that.
What a mess.
I was like, I just hope they don't find me. This would be embarrassing for the family.
There hasn't been any reports of damage or any injuries, which is always good. But you know what? This is always a reason to talk about being prepared. You guys are in Southern California now, so are you prepared at home?
No. Can someone check on my house? Because I don't know if it's all right. You know, I'm probably not prepared. I think you need water and like a knife. You need a knife.
Food, things like that. Enough for 2 days, and cash because ATMs go down. So talk to me about, you know, are you prepared as well?
I'm not. I think I should probably hit up the pharmacy because I could trade if there was like some kind of apocalyptic earthquake.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are lighthearted about all of this, you know. As you were, thank you very much for talking to us, you know, but it is always good to have those medicines that you need, and also medicines for your pets when you're talking about, you know, those earthquake preparedness kits. And if you don't want to buy all the supplies yourself, you can always get them from the American Red Cross. I'm going to send it back to you guys.
Matt, as you talk to people out there, you know, you can let them know that earthquakecountry.org, that's a very good resource in order to get prepared for the next one.
You know what? I was a board member with the American Red Cross, so I'm always talking about that as well, nonprofit. So.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Let's just bring you back to what we know at this point, a 5.3 earthquake, the strongest felt in the region since 2014. 2014, of course, we were talking about the La Habra earthquake. This is 23 miles, the epicenter, about 23 miles off the Channel Islands. And the intensity, according to Caltech, they're saying would cause perhaps some light structural damage if you were closer to the epicenter. So that would be closer to the Channel Islands area. But of course, all of us here in the LA County, Ventura County, we felt the ripple effects there. They are saying that there likely will be no significant damage, just things that fell off shelves. You, of course, have been sending us some of those pictures, so we saw some of that. Caltech calling it a good size jolt. And just to give you a little perspective of where this magnitude is compared to other earthquakes, the Northridge earthquake, which is a 6.7, Dr. Lucy Jones telling us that that had 60 times more the energy than what we felt here today.
All right, and as Bob mentioned, we thank you so much for reaching out to us and letting you know if you felt it and if you're okay, if any damage in your area, and so far, no.
Minutes. I think you meant 15 seconds. Oh. Fuck.
All right,
everybody. Pilar Arias here with Fox News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. It sounded like KTTV's coverage was going to continue there. Not quite sure if they're in a commercial break, trying to communicate with their reporter there on scene. On the left-hand side, you're taking a look at aerials from KABC's helicopters. It looks like KTTV is replaying the news conference.
The coast, and we've lost a lot of the potential boarding time.
Do you have the capability of playing the alert that you've received here in the seismological lab?
So this was this event here. I'll just grab the pointer.
Earthquake, weak shaking expected in 8 seconds. Earthquake, earthquake.
So you can see we started with about 10 seconds of warning.
Could you repeat that, please?
You might have to wait until it finishes.
Just give us a heads up before you do it.
Earthquake, weak shaking expected in 8 seconds. Earthquake, earthquake.
Sorry, now how I was going to respond. Do you want me to give you a countdown?
One more question. There's a tremendous amount of oil exploration and production in the channel. Have you heard from any of the rigs, any of the oil extractors out there as to whether they felt it, and if there's, I would assume they're fairly sensitive to seismic movement of their apparatus?
The short answer is no, not yet. If there were people out there on rigs, hopefully they will report in.
Okay, last question.
What is your maybe you're not the right person to ask this, but what is your understanding of the status of the Shake Alert program? There's been issues about funding and whether is it moving forward? Is it not moving forward?
It is moving forwards. Obviously, the program is still seeking full support and full funding, but we do have continuation funding right now, so we are proceeding with development. We're working towards having a limited public rollout within the next year.
So right now, the alerts only go to an organization like yours and...
So to researchers and also to a group of pilot users in a number of different sectors, transportation, infrastructure, utilities and so on, who have provided critical feedback on the tools and the kind of information they need to make early warning effective for them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Feel better.
I'm sorry.
All right, everyone. It seems the USGS is wrapping up a news conference there. Newser, as we refer to them. We're going to continue to tour Southern California looking for any damage with KABC, but so far all seems well. They say the earthquake was so far off the coast that likely just some stuff fell off some shelves, but so far it appears everyone and everything are okay. You're watching News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're happy to have you. This is what we do Monday through Friday from about 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Arizona time. Again, my name is Pilar Arias, another News Now host. His name is Mike Page. We all